welcome back. This video is on the first principles of energy and the human organism. So defining the human organism first off, what we're talking about when we talk about the organism is the physical body. In yoga, you might hear that referred to as the food body, because that's literally what we're referring to. Is we're referring to the individual particles of carbon and amino acids and lipids and all of the things that go into what we're tangibly made out of, and it accumulates with us throughout our life, obviously. We are also in this series addressing the presence of the psyche within the organism as a definition. And so everything that's going on mentally, cognitively, emotionally, consciously, unconsciously, that's part of the organism. And so the psyche of the organism and the soma, the physical body, the food body, the soma, psyche and soma, together make up what we encounter in our daily lives as our organism, and it is structured on top of the energetic underpinning that I referenced in the introduction video. We know scientifically that everything is energy. Einstein said this is not philosophy, this is physics, and I'm going to trust his judgment on that, but we can absolutely get into the ideas of this philosophically to help us understand how this works. And I think it's really fun that we can work with this mathematically, if that's your inclination, or we can work with this intellectually, and we can also work with this somatically, and that's where it all comes together for me. So let's talk about the underpinning. Let's talk about energy. Energy, first of all, cannot be created or destroyed. That is the first law of thermodynamics. Nothing is ever lost. Nothing is ever truly gained. It just moves around and it changes forms and it transforms and it can even change directions. But it's never going to really go away, and nothing is ever really lost. And so that creates, for me, this idea of like a medium, like a fluid that is energetic, that coexists within the same space as our physical food body and our conscious awareness. It's all still here coexisting together. We know from Newton that for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So think about the idea of like stirring a pot and visualize how all the veggies and things like that move around and they swirl against each other and they knock into each other. And when I punch a brick wall, that brick wall stays right against me with equal force. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. There's relationship in our reality. Newton also tells us that a body in motion stays in motion unless acted on by an outside force. And similarly, a body at rest stays at rest unless acted on by an outside force. And when we're thinking about two forces meeting each other, which one's bigger, right? That's going to be the question that determines the answer of what happens when they meet. So let's break this down a little bit, because my intention with today's video is to make this easy, is to make this as simple as we can. So energy is going to be positive or it's going to be negative. And those don't imply any sort of qualitative component. That's not good and bad. That's not happy and sad. That's positive or negative, this way or that way. And so we know that energy exists in two forms, and that's going to be potential energy or kinetic energy. So kinetic is energy in motion. Thinking about flow, thinking about light, thinking about heat. You can hold your hand near the fire and feel the heat of the flame, and you don't get burned until you get close enough to the source that the amount of energy from the fire comes up against the amount of energy contained in your anatomy, and now we've burned ourselves. But we knew it was coming. So that's going to be kinetic energy, though, because it is in motion. Potential energy is going to be energy that's waiting. And by waiting, I mean it's already contained within a structure, like a chemical bond, in a well, any structure. A chemical bond, a mechanical tension, just in our body when our muscles tense up, when our fascia tenses up. It's like winding a spring, and then it's just waiting until that containment, that structure, whatever it is going to be released. That's why atomic bombs blow up, because when that atom is split and that structure is ruptured, that's when the energy is released back into kinetic form. And so that's kind of nice to know that there's really only two things going on here. We have kinetic energy or potential energy. We have energy that's moving or energy that's not moving. In the introductory video, I introduced the concept that form follows function. And I think we're still talking about the same thing here. So form, being structure, being potential energy, is waiting to be released, to do something else. But the reason that it was there to begin with, the reason it formed, is because of the function that was flowing through earlier. And so what are we talking about now? We're talking about kinetic energy. We're talking about energy in motion. Energy in motion versus energy in structure. And they go back and forth because energy can never be created or destroyed. So when we say form follows function, which I learned in my undergraduate anatomy class, that form follows function, energetically that tells me that form forms around the flow, forms around the kinetic energy that's moving. So that's pretty handy to know, I think. I think that's pretty handy to know. So, I'd like to introduce some vocabulary words to help us talk about this even easier, more easily. Energetically speaking, we can describe this in terms of momentum or inertia. Momentum is the conserved total energy of a body as it's moving. Think about the whole organism. The total conserved energy of a body as it's moving. Inertia is our resistance to change. The resistance of a body to change in direction. Inertia is what makes us hit our head on the windshield when we slam on the brakes too fast. Because we slammed on the brakes and we applied momentum coming in the opposite direction, but our body was still moving forward in its original trajectory, and it was resistant to change. A body in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an outside force. That's how that works, and we can talk about it by knowing the words momentum and inertia. Momentum is the power, the energy in motion. Inertia is the resistance to change. So again, we've got two things that we're needing to understand here. we're needing to understand force, function, flow, energy and motion, and form, which is what happens when those patterns become so reinforced that they are now having a rigidity into their characteristic. And we know that form follows function. So when you're thinking about your energy and the energy of your organism, what we want to really start to be curious about is, where's your momentum coming from? How are you generating your energy, your forward motion, your metabolism, your ability to get out of bed in the morning and go to the gym and go to work and do all of the things? And where are you experiencing inertia? Where are you experiencing resistance to your energy? Is there pain? Is there illness that feels like it's serving as an obstacle? Is there an injury? Is it just cold outside? Where's your inertia? Where's that resistance showing up for you? And starting to be able to make those kinds of discernments, because we're talking about energy in the human organism and how to curate that. How do we clean that up? How do we get intentional with how energy is flowing through our life if everything is energy? And so I want you to know that physiologically, things can also only go one of two directions. We talked about positive and negative polarity at the very beginning, not as good or bad, but just as this way or that way, describing direction of flow, polarization of current, this way or that way. And physiologically, things are going to move one of two ways. They're either going to move up or they're going to move down in terms of the level of arousal that you experience in your physiology. And that's going to be a whole other video, so get pumped about it. But physiologically, it goes up or down. And energetically, everything only moves this way or that way. And energy only does one of two things. It either moves or it doesn't move. And for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only transform or move around. And I think that's a really important place for us to be able to start from. So, thank you so much for watching. And if you have questions or anything to say about this material, I would love to hear from you. Drop it in the comments. And I am really excited to see where we go next. I hope this was useful.